Hello and welcome to the Marina Show. I'm Marina Lazaris, author of Men Need Love Too. And today I'm joined by Justin. Justin, welcome. You are a breathwork facilitator, entrepreneur. And would you like to add anything more to the list? A
Yeah, thank you
human
so much for
being.
the yeah, human being above all else. That's the greatest title.
Anything,
Absolutely.
would you like to add anything more into your passions and things that you're creating in this world?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I feel like I'm multidimensional. Sometimes I struggle to figure out exactly who I am and what I do, but I feel like yeah, life has brought me so many opportunities to touch so many different realities and realms. And I'm just grateful to be a human being. And I love human behavior. I love studying humans. I've loved, uh, yeah, seeking to understand life and the greater truths of life. And I feel like I'm a humble student of life. That'd probably be the greatest kind of understanding of who I am. I'm a humble student of life.
Beautifully put, as all masters say. So it's really gorgeous to have you here as a conscious man contributing to society, walking an example and igniting other men on that path, right?
Mm.
So if we look at your journey and your becoming, what was that moment when you just thought, I need to walk a different path?
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, you mentioned that I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I think a lot of people that may see me or see the content that I produce at this in this season of my life may not understand that, but I have a business background in real estate. So I got my real estate license and got into the industry around the age of like 19, 20. And about 3 to 4 years inside of my real estate career, I ended up succeeding and climbing that sort of business ladder. And yeah, achieving a lot of success per se. And I think a lot of men see success and equate it to their worth. And I
Yeah.
think that the people that I was following, the people I was surrounding myself with, the environment, it seemed as if like that was the end all be all. And when I sort of reached the height of my success at that season of my life, that was when I started to ask the questions like, if I have all of these things and I can access pretty much anything in the material world, to purchase alongside other things like power, so on and so forth. You know, with money, quote unquote, comes a perceived power. And I think it was in that moment that I began to question life. And I think that a lot of individuals, specifically men, reach this pinnacle of success, yet their relationships are broken. Their relationship with themselves are broken. The quality of the life that they're living, their health, their wellness, their radiance, like none of that stuff is aligned. And I think that for me, you know, it's quite paradoxical and comical because at the height of my career per se, or at the height of my life, from a basic man's perspective, that was when I was at my metaphorical most lowest. And I think that sometimes life puts you through those things so that you can be humbled. And the greatest thing that I would ever say is in those moments I was humbled. And that's what sort of metaphorically and literally brought me to my knees. And I started to ask greater questions like, why am I here? What's my true purpose? And I think that if someone asks that genuinely and authentically and truly, then this universal force sort of responds back to you and provides you with the material needed to take you on this new path, as your question sort of hinted to. So that was really what catalyzed the shift into this seeking of the truth, the seeking for what truly fulfills me. What do I really want to do? What was the purpose that God or life placed inside of me at birth? And how can I be of greatest service to the whole? And at the time, you know, making money and succeeding in real estate, it just wasn't something that equated to a greater purpose. And I feel like a man that doesn't live in accordance to his higher purpose will always fall short of living the life that he desires to live. So I'll kind of pin it there for now.
I'll acknowledge you for that because there's nothing more attractive than a man living a life of passion and purpose.
Mm,
It's something that no one can take from you, and it's a very authentic thing to do. So I acknowledge you for taking them steps to be real and to
yeah.
be who you are in this world. So how has this changed your life when it comes to relationships?
Well, first and foremost, it's changed the relationship that I have with myself. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to share that because, after I went through that sort of awakening would probably be the best word to encapsulate what was occurring inside of me at that stage in time. I started to quiet the noise of the outer world, of the relationships that surrounded me. I quieted the world of business and finance and everything else that was occurring. And I started to feel this inner call to build a greater relationship with myself. And I feel like anyone that goes through a great inner awakening path, they have to change the relationship in the way that they relate to themselves to then change the quality of the relationships that one, they attract into their life, and then two, their relationships in general. So it's changed my relationship drastically. And I think anyone that is on this sort of spiritual quest or this quest to know thyself or just to enhance their life in general, you begin to notice that the people that were in your life that may not have been a vibrational match, or maybe that were leading you into toxic behaviors or things that weren't quite serving your life to the degree that you wished, those people begin to sort of fall away. And I think that the more that one is capable of doing that inner work, the more that the relationship around you actually kind of like match that vibration that you're working on. So by doing the inner work and kind of reconciling those parts of myself that I feel like were inauthentic or out of integrity, I began to attract more individuals that were authentic, true, genuine, that had a greater purpose. And this is all energy, it's frequency, it's vibration. And I know some men don't quite understand those words, but it's like, everything has a vibrational match. And I think that when you understand that, you begin to understand that the more that you enhance the quality of your life, the quality of relationships, the quality of the relationship that you have with yourself, and the way that you operate in life, the more that those individuals that are on that same path will begin to become attracted to you into your life. So it's worked wonders in regards to the quality of the relationships that I've had in my life.
That's amazing. So, if a man's listening to this, what step, he's gone through this situation, he's got the success, he's, maybe a property entrepreneur, whatever he's doing, and he's hit these ceilings and he's still discontent, sorry, or disconnected. What steps would you offer him?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's ultimately the greatest answer that I would be able to share in that regard is it comes down to him listening to God, life, whatever's speaking to him in those moments, to slow down and to connect less with the head and more with the heart. And this is why I speak a lot about the feminine. Like we both have masculine and feminine energy inside of us, but we've just lived in a culture in the last 200 years where it's just extremely hyper masculine dominated, and we don't have time to relax. We don't have time to listen. It's just continuous go go go. I mean, I was working 16-hour days. I'd get home and I'd still be on the phone with my clients trying to close deals. I mean, it was just nonstop. And I think a lot of men live this lifestyle where and this is a complex topic because men need to provide for their families and their children and the people around them. So maybe it is necessary for them to have this commitment and discipline to life, and that's beautiful. But the truth is, there's going to come a time, place where you're going to have to slow down. Whether it's your wife that's going to reflect that to you, whether it's your business and the economy that's going to reflect that to you, whether it's the conflicts of the world that's going to reflect that to you. But there's going to be a space and time, I feel like, in every man's journey where life is going to sort of metaphorically humble you. And if you're not listening in those moments, then it may not be easy to um, reorient your life in the right direction. And I think that why people struggle, to answer your question on a different angle, I think why men struggle is because when those humbling events do happen, they turn to distractions, substance abuse, their phones, right? Overeating, laziness, procrastination, these different things that distract them from that deep call that may emerge inside of their heart, or when life's trying to talk to them. So there's not necessarily a thing that they can do, rather than just learn to listen to life and when it's guiding you. And this is why the reason why I love breath work is because you can't be attuned to your breath and not be attuned to life. I think for a long time I was so anxious and disoriented, and my life was so out of order. It was because the reason was because I was so out of sync with my breath. I was out of sync with life's rhythm. It was my will, not thy will. It was just, I continued to wanted to force my way through life. And I think that that's one of the greatest shadows that men have, and women as well, humans in general. But we want to force our way through life instead of listening to where life wants to take us. And that's a fine dance. And I think the breath is one of the greatest tools to bring a man into his presence. And through his presence, there's always going to be guidance from life that will bring him to a greater expression of himself.
I love that. Yeah, rather than forcing and pushing, you're receiving that you're in balance. And as you said, the breath, what a beautiful facilitation and metaphor
Mm.
between letting in and letting go. And so many of us hold our breath, right? How common is that when you do breath work with individuals?
Oh, so common. I mean, the way that you breathe is the way that you live your life. You know, if your breath is shallow and constricted, guess what? Your life is going to be shallow and constricted. If your breath is deep and pregnant, then your life is going to be deep and pregnant with a plethora of beautiful things. So being able to change your breath, you're gonna have the capacity to change your life, you know. And if you're able to change your breath, you're able to change your energy, and you're able to when you're able to change your energy, you're able to change your life. So the breath pattern, I've learned so much by just watching myself breathe over the past 7, 8 years and studying it, and having the capacity to watch thousands of other people breathe, in the sort of equivalence of how the breath correlates to the quality of the life that we live. It's quite phenomenal.
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely. And I think a woman has to do it naturally when she gives birth, right? And goes
Absolutely.
through that different, of just the baby gets formed for 9 months and then you have to breathe the baby out. And then, but a man doesn't necessarily. Maybe if he's with a woman when she's given birth, but
Mm,
it's almost like, as you said, unless you've been brought into this awareness, like
mm,
how are you breathing? Are you holding your breath? Are you not letting
mm,
go? Are you pushing through life? Like we don't realize that our bodies are telling us and are the key to all of this, but also it's our health, right? Isn't it? Like lots of men get ill, especially when they're working 7 days a week, especially when they're working like you was.
yeah. Well, a good way to put it is, when you're constantly working that much, you're in a constant state of survival. So to bring some science into this sort of mix to calm the analytical mind, it's like if you're constantly in survival, your body has no time or space to heal. So if you're continuously putting your nervous system under this pressure, your nervous system doesn't have no time or place to reset and realign. And it's probably true that your sleep quality is terrible. It's probably true that you're not eating the greatest amount of foods, and you're not taking care of yourself overall. So this survival energy that most individuals in general, but if we're speaking about men, most men
Yeah.
operate from, you're never going to have an opportunity to connect to this greater intelligence that wants to move through you. Um, and therefore, that can turn into a plethora of different diseases. Your mental health begins to deteriorate. The way that you live your life, your relationships. I mean, there's a um, layers to the effect of the cause of you not relaxing and being present with your life. And it shows, and it showed for me for a very long time, because the quality of my life just wasn't ideal to what I actually wanted to live. And sometimes it takes a catastrophic event for someone to come to the realization of that, whether that's a health issue that emerges, whether it's the loss of a business, the loss of a relationship, these different catastrophic events. That's life's way of speaking to you. Depression, anxiety, these different things. Like, this is your body speaking to you in ways that, and if you're not listening, it'll just get louder and louder and louder until you listen.
And the breath, like when I think about it, like when I think of snoring,
Mm.
is that something to do with the breath as well? Like not it being in sync and then coming out in your sleep?
Yeah, that's definitely a deep topic. I mean, I think snoring. I don't have too much study on this, but I know
No.
snoring has to do a lot with your health.
Yeah.
Um, Not breathing properly, right? You're breathing through the mouth. You're catching for air. You're grasping for air.
Catching for air.
Um,
Okay, so you're grabbing on almost. Yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
It's interesting in relationships because I've had facilitated breath work, and I found it to be one of the most intimate things I've ever done in my life.
Mm,
So intimate, like to have somebody hold me and hold my back and say that they've got me whilst I was breathing with a mouthpiece. And so, how could we encourage couples to connect more through things like breath work and deepen their relationships?
yeah. Well, the breath, I feel like, connects us to spirit. And
Yeah.
spirit is this ever changing or non changeable essence that's inside of all of us. It's the interconnectedness that we feel amongst each other in our humanity. So, uh, breath work and using your breath can create a lot more intimacy for people that are in relationships. Just simply even sitting down with your partner and matching each other's rhythm, matching each other's breath for 5, 10 minutes. I mean, even 2 minutes, closing your eyes and just attuning to each other's breath. There can be a lot of intimacy just inside of that experience alone. So the breath connects us to each other. The breath work specifically that I facilitate is more of an active experience where you're bringing people into this sort of somatic release where things get a lot. It's kind of intense. But to answer your question, I think the breath has a way to connect us, and at a greater scale, if you're connected to your breath and you're connected to the rhythm of the world. And I think that a lot of people just don't have no awareness to their breath. They're breathing really shallow. And, the breath connects us to life. I think actually the breath is life. And in many different spiritual traditions, they say that God breathed the breath of life into us, and kind of spirit became man. So it's like breath returns us back to our origin. So I think that what you were sharing in your experience is like you were remembering a ancient part of yourself that maybe humanity has forgotten. And the breath brings us back to that remembrance. And that's why I'm in love with it, is because anytime I lose myself, which we all do, the breath brings me back to center, and it brings me back to who I am. And you can't be aware of your breath and not be empathetic to someone else or yourself. And that's why I think breath is here to reawaken humanity's highest potential, because it reconnects us with who we truly are. And when you know who you truly are, it's very hard to live out of alignment with your greater purpose or who you're meant to be in this lifetime.
I love that. It's like your soul and your spirit and your energy and your life force. And, everyone wants to have more of that, right? And if you're just pushing all the time, it's almost like you're restricting it, and having these places of nurture and care and cultivating that in relationships with one another, right? So it's coming up to Christmas and people might be stressed, but the thing no one can take from you is your connection with others. As you
Mm,
said initially, with yourself, right? So listening to your breath, tuning in, but to deeply connect you with your partner, doing these exercises, like you're saying, just breathing together and match it. And it might seem scary for some guys to do this stuff, right?
yeah.
And but I believe it's probably that's the essence of going deeper with someone and being more vulnerable, would you say?
Yeah, I think the only reason why it's scary for a lot of men to experience that, and I think it's both ends, but specifically with men, is because they're scared of vulnerability. They were never
Yeah.
taught to be open and to create spaciousness with themselves or another. I mean, men are very superficial for the most part. I was very superficial for a long time. I had to hide my heart and my empathy and my sensitivity and my connection to life because I was taught from other men around me that that was a weakness, like that wasn't manly per se. So I think that a lot of men secretly crave that intimacy. In fact, they're missing that intimacy was what I would go on the limb to say. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of men fear that because it metaphorically and psychologically means that they're exposing themselves. And no
Yeah.
man wants to expose themselves, because the moment that they expose themselves mentally at a psychological level, that means that someone could take advantage of them. And they don't want to do that. When in truth, true vulnerability is the greatest strength that you can have. And I think of people like Jesus or people, other kind of spiritual um, role models that have established a great blueprint for us to follow. It's like perfect vulnerability is the perfect protection. We just have been taught different. And I think vulnerability, a lot of men stray away from with their partner because they're scared to connect to that depth. And in a way, the feminine sort of annihilates them in that way, because it brings them to the truth of who they are, right? There's no more running from. It's almost like you have to slow down so much where you have to face yourself. And most men have never actually faced themselves, so they fear that level of presence or transparency or vulnerability. But I promise you, and I'm only saying this because I've experienced it myself, it's in those moments, in that vulnerability, in that depth, in those levels of connection, that you're going to find exactly what you're looking for. And it's going to be beyond what you've ever experienced in your entire life. And that's true intimacy. True intimacy is allowing someone to see into you. And men have just been taught the opposite of that.
Yeah, and it's almost like this fear they might experience an emotion that they can't get out of, perhaps.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And I say you can move quickly through emotions and be held through that, and that's okay, right? It's okay to experience. We're not here just to be AI robots and be machines. We're here
Yeah,
to feel.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of men hear the things that we're sharing, and psychologically what goes through their mind. It's like, if I feel, then I don't have time and space to penetrate the world in my business. And it's not
Yes.
true. Like
Yeah, what
it's
is
quite
that?
the opposite.
Yeah, so it's almost like because there is something, I think I talked about this in my book, and I was hearing it a lot, and it was all about going out there, being a man, penetrating the world. And I was just like, it was one thing that I was just like, oh my God, like I need to do something because it's not, it's about building deeper connections within you rather than thinking you need to go out and penetrate the world and claim and dominate.
Hmm.
And it's all, as you said, it's like running.
Yeah. What comes to my mind is a lot of men are getting intrigued by like the Stoic philosophy, and Stoic philosophy tells you to be conscious and aware of your emotions, but not fall victim to them. And I think that there's something powerful, because there's a lot of spiritual men that are wishy-washy inside of their emotions, and I've fallen victim to that in the early
Right.
stages of my journey. And I don't think that that's necessarily balanced either. So there's psychological
What do you mean?
truth.
Sorry, just to come in, but what do you mean
Yeah.
by wishy-washy in your emotions?
Meaning that like an emotion comes, you kind of bask in it, and you lose your discipline.
Right.
I know a lot of men that get so caught up in their emotion, in the processing of their emotion, that they lose their strength to go out there and be active. And I think that we're seeing that at a large scale, which is natural, because a lot more men are actually getting introduced to that feminine essence. And I think that a lot of men need to get initiated into that feminine depth, their emotions, being able to feel, being able to connect again. And then you begin to rebalance yourself and step back into that masculine. But once you've developed that connection to self, connection to your heart, then you're able to back that with that masculine discipline, and be able to still live out your greater purpose while remaining extremely connected to yourself, to others, and the world. And this is a great dance for a man to begin to cultivate within himself. And what's been coming through for me the entire time that you've been sharing is like, the reason why men struggle in relationships is because they are lacking that emotional availability or intimacy or maturity in their life. So a lot of most women crave to experience that connection, but a man has never been taught how to be present in his body. So anytime she wants to feel that connection, that actually fills her cup up from him. In fact, that's what makes her feel safe, is that quality of presence. But how can you be present if you're thinking about everything that you're thinking about on a day-to-day basis? No woman will ever truly surrender or feel safe inside of the container if you're not able to create the container. The container is your energy, and if you're not able to be present um, in your energy, then you'll never be able to cultivate that connection that she's seeking. So I think a lot of this is a huge problem that we're experiencing in this world.
Huge. It's massive. It's massive
Yeah.
because it's disconnect. And I talk about it around the difference between making love and fucking, right? And
Yeah.
so making love is enjoying each moment and being really present.
Mm,
And how often have we experienced that in our lives compared to men thinking it's about a performance?
mm,
It's about size, length of time, it's about an end goal. And metaphorically, if they're in that fucking mode, they're fucking everyone and they're fucking themselves. And
Yeah.
then they're unhappy. And then they're going to the next thing, and they're still unhappy. And it's like, okay, it's there's another way. But
Mm.
some people don't even know unless they, I don't know, come across this podcast and go like, listen, I've been there. That's no one teaches me. Well, teaches me, but no one teaches people about there is a different way um, of deep connection. It doesn't need to be that way. You can. That's not where the magic happens, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's equivalent, what you're sharing is equivalent to what a man experiences inside of his business or his life. You
Yeah.
know, like the quality of what you just shared inside of the bedroom romantically with another woman. It's like he's operating in that same energy from his in his daily life. So this is a
Yes.
habit, a pattern that he's neurologically programmed himself to believe. So how
Yes.
again, if you're not able to be present inside of your business, or present inside of your life, then you're definitely not going to be present inside of the bedroom, romantically or sexually, inside of your relationship. And again, this is why so many women are um, either cheating and or these relationships are leading to closely either divorce and or further
Yeah.
than that. And I think that we're in a pandemic right now of
Mm.
and it's all a part of the greater process because men and women are beginning to wake up to this greater potential and self-worth that they're capable of receiving. um, and I share very often, you know, when women reclaim their power and step into the truth of who they are and what they truly seek to receive in a relationship, then it forces the masculine or men to wake up. So I think a lot of women are in relationships that don't actually feel fulfilled or that are not bringing them radiance and the love that they seek, yet they continue to stay because they think that that's the right way or that's the only way. And I think it's ultimately we're going through both individual awakenings, and the more people step into what they truly seek and embody their truth and step into that, then I think the more we'll have greater relationships that are connected in deeper ways.
I love that. I love that metaphor around even just having my breath work with somebody holding my back, saying they've got my back. Like, it was so emotional. And I had to process a few days after that because I was like, I'm just breathing and someone's holding my back, and that was it. But it was such an intimate experience. And it was in the being, it was in the doing absolutely nothing. And I will remember that much more than other situations, where you're programmed to think that's the way.
Mm.
And so to help couples come together more, it is the simple exercises you would say, what would they be when it comes to breath work?
Are you asking? Can you like reiterate your question? Are you asking how
Yeah.
couples could
So
connect deeper with the
yes.
breath?
Yeah. So say there's couples out there right now, women are awakening, men are disconnected because there's lots of fear being pumped into the society around, there's just fear everywhere, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they need to work hard, they need to provide. And then relationships are falling, right? People are getting divorced, they're unhappy. And ideally, we want to encourage people to come together, to fall back in love and and step more into their soul, right?
Yeah.
So, is there any tips you can give around couples that are listening to this and men, right? And how this will change their reality?
Yeah, I'm following you now. Well, it's a noble thing to seek for quality relationships, and I feel like it's also important to note that there's no saving someone else. You know, I think that there's so many, specifically women, that enter into this savior complex, and men as well. And you know, ultimately, it comes down to the individual to seek the help necessary to create the change that they seek inside of their own personal life. Now, I know that that sounds harsh because there are different ways, therapy, so on and so forth. But if you're not able to connect to your own individual process and be willing to create the change that you seek, you're going to continue to repeat the patterns. And if you're on the other side of that, you're going to continue to be the victim of someone else's circumstances that are leading to the feelings that you feel inside of yourself. You know, so that's one thing that I would share um, from the get go. But what I will share is there's definitely possibilities inside of a relationship that may be falling apart to create more intimacy or connection at a deeper level for each other. And I think that that's an individual process as well as a collective process. And there's so many complexities inside of what I just shared because it depends on
Yeah,
numerous
absolutely.
things that are occurring inside of the relationship. But three of the things that I feel like are really important. The first one is open communication. If a relationship does not have open communication and you guys try to speak to each other and it just becomes this mess, don't expect for any resolve or clarity to emerge inside of your relationship. So open communication is huge. With open communication, you must have transparency, right? Transparency is also equivalent to authenticity or honesty. So many people are inauthentic and dishonest in their relationship. And ultimately, they're dishonest in their relationship because they're dishonest with themselves. So if you have open communication, transparency, and a level of openness and honesty inside of your relationship, I think that that alone will be able to create greater levels of connection and intimacy inside of a relationship. I just find that that's very difficult to do if you haven't cultivated that same connection with self, which is why I'm really um, committed and devoted to individual awakening, because I think that that really kickstarts the process for a great relationship with another.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how it doesn't need to be either or, right? It's almost like there's a lot of like self development.
Yeah.
And I talk about this in my book, like people doing their gratitude list and people doing this, and people are going off in all these different directions, but then forgetting to come back together and going, okay,
Mm,
so how can we look into each other's eyes every morning and say nothing for a few minutes? How
mm,
can we listen to each other's breaths and breathe together, right?
yeah.
And these different, maybe that's more like tantric way, but there's things that they can do to deepen the relationship and then not have a relationship based on fear, because what we're
Mm,
saying is so often people can't even speak because, and then things like cheating and things like that come up because if the other person saying, oh, you can't, this part of you is not welcome, I don't like this, or don't look at another woman, or, and they've got all them insecurities, then the man is just not going to feel free. And by not feeling free, he can't speak his truth, which I see with many men.
mm,
And then there's a toxic, almost, is it femininity coming from women,
yeah.
like shaming men. And the blame culture is massive at the moment. Like, oh, he's this and he's that, and da da da. Well, actually, it's both of you. And I
Yeah.
get, I'm pro marriage and I'm pro divorce. I've been through my own divorce. But ideally, it's if you hadn't have explored things like breath work and sound healing and all these beautiful, deep, connective experiences together, I would say it's a bit of a shame. It's a shame.
Mm,
But sometimes it's for the best and the highest good for you to go your own separate way. And you will know when you listen to your heart and your intuition what to do by being honest, right?
mm. Absolutely, and that's where it comes back down to being an individual awakening. I think we're living in a time where it's not enough to blame another individual. It's not enough to blame another country. It's not enough to blame anything outside of you. And I think that that's the journey that I went on. It's like I was the greatest breakthrough that came to me was I was the one that was creating my reality the entire time through my thoughts, through my
Yes,
feelings, through my
yes.
behaviors, and the way that I responded to life. And I think that the moment that one takes their power back in that way, knowing that they attracted that partner that's sleeping next to them, or they
Yeah,
attracted that disease that's inside of their body, or they
yeah,
attracted the anxiety and the depression that they're experiencing, or they attracted the financial scenario that they're in. It's like the moment that you take that radical responsibility within yourself, there's just this lightness and clarity and direction that emerges. And I think that ultimately that's what life is creating for us. It's like life, God is so benevolent. It's so in our favor that it'll do everything in its possible. It'll do everything in its possible way to orient your life and opportunities and experiences, even if it's to hurt you, to make you evolve or to give you the opportunity to wake up. And I think that if you're not attuned to these different things that are happening in your life, then you can very easily um, miss the cue. You could very easily miss the cue. And I think that more and more people just need to reclaim that freedom inside of themselves and take responsibility for their life. And the moment that you stop pointing the finger is the moment that you've reclaimed your power. And the moment that you've reclaimed your power, you now have energy to create your life. And you now tend to rely less on another person or another individual in some sky or some religious book or religious text or anything outside of you. You begin to take responsibility for yourself. And I just think that that's what the world needs more of.
I love that. Yeah, that you're creating it all. And when you're just seeing everyone as a gift and everything as a gift, even the things that don't seem like a gift, to bring you
Yes.
more awareness, right? And as you said, and when you claim all that, then suffering goes away, and ultimately you become happy because you're like, hey,
Mm.
you can you can laugh at yourself, and and then love these different parts. I believe that when you love these parts that show up, even if they're not really great, be like, oh, okay, I need to send that more love. They stop showing up. And so, yeah, I mean, on your journey, you've gone through like your journey with the relationships and things like this, and you decided to go on a path of celibacy. Can you explain that?
Yeah, for sure. I think we talked about that the last time we connected.
Yeah,
It just felt like a calling for me. I think a lot of people ask me about this, and I don't usually speak it openly. I'm not afraid of sharing my path or anything like that, but it really came naturally and organically. And one of my teachers taught me, and he was a male, one of the teachers that appeared in my life, and he taught me about this word sublimation. And another teacher began to teach me about energy, right? It's like where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So my entire life was placing my energy and attention on succeeding in life. So guess what happened? Life brought me more opportunities to succeed. The moment that I started to see that that wasn't the path for me at that specific point in time, I noticed something. I noticed that the more that I placed my attention and energy on the things that I wish to create, peace, love, happiness, joy, expansion, creativity, beauty, love, all of these, wellness, joy, wholeness, it's like, oh, I started to place my attention and energy on those things. I started to experience them in my body, ecstasy, bliss. Who wouldn't want to experience these things? Because when you feel whole, you stop needing the things in the outside. So I began to feel so whole inside of myself. I began to feel so blissful inside of myself that I was literally creating the same chemicals inside of my brain and body that you would experience in an orgasm with another person. So if you're experiencing that with yourself, I mean, I don't know why you would need something else. And I think that this is
amazing. So it was just that, yeah. So you was having like higher energetic experiences alone than with anyone else. Is that right?
absolutely to a high degree, and
Wow.
I don't go into details about this because I think that I try to remain humble, but like when you're experiencing those things at such a high level, you're being baptized by these higher frequencies, and yeah, again, that's what led me to the path of celibacy. It's just like I began to feel the sublimation of my energy in those lower sexual centers that I was getting caught up in for a very long time in those early years of my life, and I was leaking that energy everywhere else. And I just noticed the more that I sublimated that energy inside of me and directed it, and energy is malleable, you can move it, you can play with it, it's inside of you. So if you're leaking your sexual energy everywhere that you go, and I don't think sexuality or sex needs to be shamed, because that's a whole nother thing for a whole nother day, but and we can
I
open that
don't think it
up.
needs to be shamed. I think you can learn through experiences. And I think 100% this element of, I think it's, sometimes different between men and women. Like sometimes I feel like a
It's
woman
fair.
will have a baby, give birth, go through this whole like pain, death. Whereas a man probably doesn't necessarily do that unless he turns around and goes, hey, right, I'm going to like stop for a little bit. And I suppose
Mm.
men or women, but there's an element of, as you said, this different power within men and how they can, and I suppose women, but specifically, I think when you go to penetrate the world and, things that you discuss, but you're probably better to describe this because you've been on this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that goes back to what I was sharing. The more I began to focus that energy inside of myself and stop leaking it on other things that I feel like weren't serving me, pornography, food, women in that case, quick sexual partners, drinking, going out, these different things that weren't serving me. It's like I started to have more energy to create. And guess what began to happen? I started to have more insight, more clarity, more direction. I started to get more disciplined in my life. I started to wake up early. I started to take care of my body. I started to feel more clear. I started to feel more energetic. I started to feel more vitality in my body. I started to get more direction on what my purpose was, how to act it out in the world. God became a lot more, this voice became a lot more clear to me, and I think that that's ultimately the game, is how conscious and aware can you become of this energy, and where are you leaking it out into places, people, or things that are zapping that energy from you. So my path of celibacy at that time was almost a natural and organic occurrence. In that time, and it was the best decision I could have ever made in my entire life, because it brought me the opportunities and experiences and energy needed to get clear on who I am, because it was in those years of celibacy, which I'm still on in this moment in time, that I started to receive the revelations of life. And I think that there's no coincidence that it was in that time that I started to focus on my inner path of knowing thyself, that I actually began to receive the direction that I was seeking my entire life. And my life began to naturally orient itself in the right direction. And I think, yeah, again, there's no coincidence in that. I think that there's a great key for those willing, courageous, and capable of listening to what I'm sharing and then following suit.
I love that, because I think previously when we spoke, I was like, I have so much admiration for you. But not only do I have admiration, as it shook, but it's you would trust a man more instantly that had gone down that path
Mm,
compared to a man that hadn't. It's a different grounding and a different presence. Like if they can almost have control and discipline over themselves, and they have, done this, then, as long as they're not one of these types of people that would swing out of balance, like an addiction, like one way to the other way.
yeah.
But it's for that, as you said, that connection, and then they feel that, and that's the most beautiful thing.
Mm,
Then I would feel like I trusted that person so much more.
mm-hmm.
So it's amazing how that alone can make you trust someone more as a woman
Yeah.
and admire them. I mean, ultimately, you want to admire your partner and be like, hey, they're going out in the world doing their thing. I'm going out in my world doing my thing. But there's like no question, like, because of their integrity with self, right?
Yeah, and you can't fake that stuff. I love what you're sharing, because, at some point in time, I posted a lot about this. It's like you can't cheat consciousness, and you can't fake energy. You can't fake the truth. So when you're in the presence of a man that has truly done the inner work, you'll always feel it, unless
Yeah.
you're distorting your own intuition and you haven't done enough inner work to actually see through his facade. Because I think there's a lot of men nowadays that are faking states of
Yeah.
consciousness that may not be real. I've heard stories time and time again of spiritual men that enter into these relationships. They seem woke in the beginning, and then eventually these patterns sort of reveal themselves after. But to go back to what you're sharing, I think that naturally a woman, in the biology of her body and intuition, can sense when a man has no agenda,
Yeah.
right? So that attraction or safety that you feel as you were sharing within the presence of a man that has really gone on this inner path of sublimation, of healing, so on and so forth. It's like the biology of your body naturally surrenders, because you feel energetically at a deep level that there's no agenda. Oh, this man isn't checking me out. There's no
Yeah.
feeling of sexual attraction or wanting to get around you in that way. And I think that I was just having a conversation with three beautiful friends this week, and I asked them, I'm like, how does it feel to be in the position where men all around you are continuously looking at you in this way? I mean, it's saddening to me. I wouldn't even know how to experience that as a woman, because there's always a man that's trying to use something to get you in bed and or checking you out in some provocative way. It's just like I'm very empathetic to that process with women. So I think more men need to begin to wake up to this process that I'm sharing, and I think the more, that's like the true process of a king.
I think
Like,
so. Yeah. As you said, it's like king energy. I don't think I've ever had problems so much with guys being like that, or saw it as an issue or anything like that, because I can understand where it's coming from, but it's not attractive.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, I think it's much more attractive. Like in America, the men are doing the work, right? I think, and the American men probably are the best men in the world, in my opinion. And I
Yeah, it's
like to
interesting. I've never
acknowledge
heard
that.
that.
I
I've
like
never
to
heard that.
acknowledge that because, if you speak to men in like England, so much they don't even know about attachment theory. They don't even know how
Hmm.
their upbringing affects their relationships.
There's no awareness.
There's no awareness, but there's no even wanting to move to that awareness. So it's it's a new it's it's like it's amazing that you guys are leading the way and wanting to be better in relationships and
Hmm.
realizing it's not working, and really, because there's often guys that go all these dating apps and this and that, and nobody wants to stay long, and that's a mirror of
Exactly.
themselves, right? As we're saying, that's a mirror of being in this not needy stage, being in this claiming their inner masculine, claiming
Hmm.
their power, which, as you said, you feel it, and then it's the energy that you attract people with, which is completely different, right?
From what we've been taught, absolutely. That's why I think the greatest path a man can take is the path or the journey to know thyself. And when you know thyself, you naturally begin to live out your greater purpose, and you'll naturally begin to attract the woman or relationships or friendships or brotherhood that is needed to live that life. And I think that that can't be faked. Like a man truly has to commit himself to that inner process. And I've studied enough with a lot of men and women and in this work to know that that's different for everyone. Like that
Yeah.
shows up differently for everyone. And I don't know what it means for a man to enter into that process or what's going to be the catalyst for him. But for the men that are ready to take this path on, please answer that call and listen to that nudge inside of you, because it's bringing you into the realization of who you're truly meant to be. And I think we need more men that are inside of that masculine frame, that are directing and channeling their energy towards being a force for good in this world, and being a force for God, and being a force for pure intentions. And I think that the more men that orient their life into that direction, one, they'll find potentially their partner in a very natural and organic way.
Yes.
Two, they're going to be serving the world, and there's going to be a lot less chaos and dissonance and unsafety and all of the war, conflict, so on and so forth. And he just begins to, like, I mean, I just wouldn't trade what I feel inside of my body and my heart for the world. There's no amount of money, there's nothing that I can achieve or succeed or experience that's outside of myself that would ever equate to what I feel inside of here. And one of my mentors used to tell me, he's like, there can be a billionaire in front of me, and he can have access to everything that he wants, but he would die to have what I feel inside. He would die to have what I feel inside. And I feel like I'm in that same position right now, and this isn't to pat myself on the back or to make myself seem greater than someone else, but it's just the amount of peace that one feels when you know yourself and you feel connected to yourself and you feel connected to God, whatever that is for you, as long as it's real, true, and genuine. I promise you, once you taste that grace, that love, whatever that is, you just wouldn't trade that for the world. And I think that the moment that happens, you're able to overflow that cup into other people, whether that's in a romantic relationship or whether that's in the people that you serve, your business, whatever it is.
Oh, how beautiful. How beautifully put. And yeah, there's lots of very successful men that don't have inner peace, right? And women. And I think
Yeah.
having inner peace is so beautiful, and being able to experience emotions and the human experience around other authentic, genuine people is so beautiful, and to have them deeper connections. So, if any man is scared to go on this journey, what's one final thing you can leave him with?
If any man is scared to go on this journey, what would I leave him with? Yeah, I mean, I think what comes through for me is brotherhood. I'm in a position where I want to deepen my own work to open spaces up for other men to gather together. I think that men are changed by other men. I know that that's tough to kind of receive for some women, but men are changed by other men. And I think that even in my own personal process, there was nothing my mother could have done. There was nothing that any other woman in my life could have done. It was actually when more awakened and conscious men came into my life that I actually had gave myself permission to emulate what they were doing. And I think by nature, humans, we are mirroring each other. And I think that the more men begin to wake up, the more men will have the willingness and acceptance and permission to walk that path as a king, as a warrior, as a lover. And I think that, if you're a man and you're listening to this and you don't have men that are living the life that you seek to live, it's time to find other men. It's time to get clear about the habits and behaviors that are stopping you. What are you doing that you shouldn't be doing? And begin to get clear on that, because a true man in his masculine core doesn't allow these distractions or numbness or substances or these different things hold him back from connecting to that true source and that true power that's inside. And I think that surrounding yourself with other men, if possible, and seeking for that, putting the intention out there for that, connecting with that energy inside of you, praying on it, meditating on it, journaling about it. This is real stuff. Life will respond back to you. And ultimately, it takes a hell of a lot of awareness. And if there's a man listening to this, I'm assuming that he has a hell of a lot of awareness in some way, shape, or form. And this is an invitation for you to step deeper into your purpose, your masculine core, and meet that edge. Meet your edge, and you'll find why you're here in that process.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for walking the path. Thank you for inspiring many men. How can people get in touch with you around what you do and how you can facilitate more of this? And what comes to my mind is, if this was more in like offices and workplaces and every day, right?
Yeah.
And people are then connecting to their spirit and their life force, then they'll be in that creativity initially straight away rather than reacting to things that are going on. And so their whole day would flow so much more beautifully.
Yes. I mean, shit, we need men in all areas across all realms and
Yeah.
in all organizations to embody this. And that's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about this work is when you commit to it, it overflows inside of all that you do. You don't have to become this spiritual guru and teach about
No,
relationships. You could
it's
be,
balance. Yeah.
yeah, you could be in the heart of an organization doing great things in business and still embody that masculine edge, that masculine core that you're seeking, and it will seep into the people that are around you. And I think that that's my message to the world, and that'd be the last thing that I would share. And as I take my last breath, it's like, be the change you want to see in the world, because that's how you change. We've had enough of wanting to change other people. I think it's time that we change ourselves. And in that process, you'll see and witness synchronicity and extraordinary things begin to occur in your life. And it'll leave you with no doubt in your mind that you've created that through your actions and your behavior. And I think that that's when the real life starts, when you begin to understand that you're the creator of your reality rather than the victim of it.
Do you say that before you go to bed? Do you have like a prayer that you say before you go to bed or when you wake up around something? Something?
That's a great question. I think everything that I do, I try to live intentionally. And I
Yeah.
think that if I'm intentionally present with my energy and I'm intentionally present with my breath and I'm intentionally present with myself as much as I can throughout the day and return back to it the moment that I lose it,
Yeah.
that's how you live a high quality life. And that's how you become a high quality man. So my life for a long
Oh,
time,
sorry, but I love this. So your definition of a high quality man, Justin?
you asking me that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a high quality man is connected to his heart, and he
Yes.
allows his heart or the feminine to lead his life. And the feminine is his heart, and then the brain and his masculine sort of essence could then lead the way from there. So a high quality man is being able to live an intentional life, in my opinion. And I think that intentionality leads to the life that he's always dreamed to live, and that's a process that I think every man needs to go into in his own timing. Um, but I just know that the world needs it now more than ever. We need more high value men that are out there living intentional lives, and not focusing their time and energy on things that really don't serve the collective. And if you're honest and authentic about that question and live it daily, then you'll never lose your way, and you'll be of value to the world.
And it can start from tomorrow, right? So, there is no judgment of anything that's ever gone on in the past. If you're not happy with who you're looking at when you look in the mirror, like, or your reality you've created, it's okay. You can start from tomorrow.
Perfect.